Hello, everybody, and welcome to OpenExO Live. It's really great to be with you a little bit earlier than we often do this because we have Shiraz with us, who is in Pakistan, and we didn't want to have him at midnight. And as you can see there on the screen, we have a great lineup of people all the way into May. If you're a community member and you want to be a part of OpenExO Live, you can head over to the marketplace in the OpenExO platform, where you can apply to join us on OpenExO Live. And before we get Shiraz up on stage, I do have some words from some community members. The first one comes from Rodrigo, and he just said, Shiraz is a strong leader that got the EXO mindset from the very first moment and has strong capabilities to develop EXO sprints along the way, connecting with his experience and mastery knowledge. And then from Miguel, he just said, Shiraz is a real customer-oriented person and very analytical. He explores all alternatives and options, then confirms the requirements with his customers, and only after that does he commit to the work that has to be done. What else can you ask for? He is very passionate about the EXO framework, and he has already decided he wants to expand our community in Pakistan. No mean feat. And so with that, I'd like to welcome up Shiraz here on screen. Shiraz, welcome. How are you doing this evening?
Hi, Kevin. I'm doing well. Thank you very much for the invite and having me here today.
That's perfect. That's great. So I always start OpenExO Live by asking the question, which is, can you tell us a bit about yourself? And how you actually joined the OpenExO community.
Yeah, sure. So basically, Kevin, I started as a system engineer. So my career started as a system engineer, and the amazing part was that at that point in time, technology was developing, and we used to hear about AI, robotics, and stuff, but that wasn't there. So I started in the tech field, but by virtue of, I think, my own personality, I moved more into the management side and got the opportunity to work with large MNCs managing their business operations and IT operations. And while I was doing that, I spent good 21 years working for different organizations. Specifically, these organizations were based out of either US or in Europe. And the advantage that I got was that I had that luxury of looking into as to how these organizations were developing. And since I were more into from technology management to business management, I realized that every company, when they are growing or scaling, there is a challenge, right? So at whatever stage you are of growth, you have a challenge, and you need to have like different strategies, mechanism as to how you will take those paths to grow your company. So at that point in time, I think my entrepreneur journey started, where I started realizing that if you need to scale or grow a company exponentially, then what needs to happen? And the question I normally asked myself was that, let's say if you are running a company, because I was managing the business operations, so what I need to do come Monday to actually scale or grow the company exponentially. So I started my own research, digging more into finding out as to what it takes for a company to grow exponentially, and I got deeply passionate about this purpose-led organization and how companies scale up. And during my research, so I did that for the past 5 years, and I guess somewhere around 2.5 years back or 3 years back, while I was doing my own research, more on the entrepreneur side at this point in time, helping the company that I was working to grow. I landed up into one of the webinar from Salim Ismail, and he talked about the EXO framework there, and I kind of listened to the mini wake session that he normally does, and that resonated very closely with me, because that was something that I was looking forward to and working towards. So that's how I landed up into the EXO world, and there was an opportunity at that point in time to do a EXO foundation course, so I immediately did that, and that's how I started my journey with the OpenExO community.
Awesome, and I now know you've pretty much gone through all of that, and I think a little bit later we'll speak about that and what you're doing in Pakistan. But tell us about your MTP. I mean, of course, I mean you spoke a bit about purposeful organizations, and right at the top of the EXO model is the massive transformative purpose. So tell us about your MTP.
Yeah, so I think this is my MTP was more like matured in the second part of my career. What I like when I moved to more of the entrepreneur kind of the side of my career, where I started to look into doing business on my own and doing stuff on my own for my own company. And so basically at that point in time, and I knew about the EXO framework. So my MTP is to help organizations and people to create a better future. So because since I'm coming from the corporate side mainly, so I had a deep passion about helping organizations, and I've seen the challenges that it faced. So I thought it very well resonated with what I wanted to do in my career. So from taking that side, I started doing different stuff related to my MTP. And one thing very interesting that happened was because the MTP is like your massive transformative purpose, but before that also I was working with another organization who took the concept from Simon Sinek of the golden circle, of the concept that he has of why, and then translating that into actually what your why is. So I also found that I'm good at contributing and influencing people. So that's why I moved my MTP as the helping organization and individuals to create a better future, and that's now what I do day in day out.
Okay, yeah, and I mean, ultimately that better future aligns very close. I mean, that MTP aligns very closely with that of OpenExO, right? And what we're trying to do, and ultimately though, so you've worked in a number of organizations. You've then been thinking about exponential growth. You've joined the community. You've worked with you've worked through a lot of the certifications. How would you say you're looking to embrace the EXO model, or are embracing the EXO model in terms of helping companies to to leverage exponential?
Yeah. So while and you're absolutely right here. Like the MTP that I created, I guess a year and a half back was mainly inspired from the MTP that I saw different community members had and the OpenExO MTP. Because before that, I was more focused towards the Simon Sinek kind of a model of the golden circle and stuff. And then
Yes.
it just triggered that it has to be something which is transformative. So you're absolutely right. It's coming out from that particular end. And what I also realized that taking that MTP is one area that I'm very passionate about is to help organization demystify growth and like to a certain extent exponential growth because it's very interesting that when someone entrepreneur starts a company, they have this phenomenal romance with the company, and they feel that they'll be the next Apple or Uber of the world. But to an extent, it's sad that most of the companies, and the number says like out of every 10 company, like one or two company actually scales or grows exponentially. So that was a real challenge that I saw, and I really felt that something needs to happen in this area to help companies to demystify that growth. So one of the things that I did was to actually help organization in order to get to that path is that whenever you talk about exponential growth or scalability, the challenge is that organization get into too much complex stuff. So in order to solve that problem, you need to bring that simplicity in, and then out of that simplicity, the second aspect is that entrepreneurs or business leaders or CEOs, they need to have a clear strategy and a growth roadmap as to how they'll take the company from point A to point B, which to an extent would be a gradual progress towards the exponential path. but how they're going to do that is basically very important. And once they do that, they have that plan ready of how they're going to grow exponentially. The next very important element is the execution mechanism. So how you have that execution engine which ensures that it basically take you to the next path. So that's like where I felt that the need is. And since your question was related to the EXO framework, the research that Salim and the team did like 5 6 years back on what it takes the exponential for a company to become exponential, I think that was an excellent research, and it opened a lot of avenues for people to think through. So I found that MTP is always an area which is a starting point for any company. And when I go and talk with companies, what I do is I definitely ask, the first step is that what's your MTP? And generally, people do have some kind of a purpose. The first thing is they don't have any purpose, or if they have some kind of purpose, but it's not a massive transformative purpose. So I think taking the EXO framework, starting from the MTP, and then all the attributes, if you talk about the scale or the ideas attributes, I think they have like very diversified kind of application if you apply them very very differently. So what I've seen is, because when I work with an organization and I was explaining these concepts, different ideas generated as to how they can use those attributes, and even like create a differentiated strategy. So I think all in all, what I'm now doing is like I use a lot of frameworks and tools to actually help organization, and the EXO methodology definitely is one of the area where I'm using the tools and techniques to help companies to grow.
No, absolutely, and I think, I mean, that's one thing I love about the EXO model, is that it it really can be used together with many other methodologies. You know, if you're an organization that's currently scaling and you're using scaling up, for example, you can absolutely you know, use that framework within the EXO thinking, right? And ultimately being able to to map the EXO canvas, you know, is a very powerful but very simple exercise. Um, uh, Although yes, the implementation is important, and I know I've seen, you know, many people perhaps want to implement all the attributes, and they maybe superficially try and do that, versus, you know, really you know, leveraging certain attributes well. You know, what would you think is some of the sort of common mistakes that perhaps you've seen, you know, when people are actually trying to sort of scale and grow exponentially, you know, through your sort of view of things?
Yeah, I think one of the beauty about the EXO model is that uh, the the focus on the exponential thinking part. Because what I've seen is most of the entrepreneurs or business owner, their thinking is linear. So it always start with the linear thinking mindset, like they're going to go 5%, 10% next year, and that's how they structure their planning. So I think one of the key area to focus for entrepreneurs and business owners is to adopt to that exponential thinking. What I also think is another area is that there is a famous quote from a wealth owner and a business guru, Roger Hamilton. He says that sometimes to basically speed up, you have to slow down. So I think that's also an area where people need to, like, in the realm of things, like on a daily activity, they are too much into the business. And what needs to happen is that they need to work more on the business rather than in the business. So I think that's another area where people are not too focused, and then they don't get the things right. Lastly, I think the important area which most of the entrepreneur miss is that, and this is a famous quote from Marshall Goldsmith, which says that what got you here won't get you there. I think they have reached a certain point in their business, and they have been successful, and they go into this delusion of that uh, their individual brilliance would definitely take them to the next level. For sure it will, but I feel that they need to come out of that hole and start to develop exponential leadership kind of an activity, start to delegate more on their side, and also they don't have to be shy from taking external help if it's required, and which can like which can basically help them to look into the blind spots and build the accountability and result mechanism to basically maximize their company potential. So I think these 3 4 areas are very important for companies to actually set up the right strategy, and then once they have that kind of a strategy in place, they can then start executing relentlessly on that strategy.
Absolutely. And so, you know, as I said at the beginning, you've and you said you saw Salim, you joined the community, you went through foundations, but then you jumped into pretty much every certification we have. What would you say are some of the learnings that that you've really developed going through all those different certification programs and processes?
Yeah, so as I said, like I'm now very passionate about like digging more into this exponential growth and growth of the companies. And when I joined the program, my like one of the thing which is like driving me now is the curiosity. So as you said, so I jumped into all to actually find out actually what it takes for companies to grow exponentially. So that's why I went into all the certifications and did those certifications to actually equip myself for better understanding so that I can help others, which is closely related to my MTP as well. So that's why I did what I did, and then the experience was really different, I would say, because the entire certification process, whether it's a consultant or the sprint process, is more hands-on, which I think differentiates it from any other certification process. It's more of learning by doing rather than just going into theory. So I really enjoyed that part of actually implementing, and it was a lot of work, but still I think the learning was also amplified based on the framework. So it was a great learning experience. I learned a lot, like my own thinking about how to look at things from an exponential perspective um, jumped significantly. Met a lot of amazing people during the certification. I think I've said that before, but we have a very amazing community of a lot of people with diversified kind of a knowledge and very helpful in giving. So that was also one of my key takeaway, like right from the certification process, because I went into the ambassador certification as well. So people are willing to help, share the feedback, and actually they don't shy away to like actually explain what needs to happen. So I think all in all, I enjoyed the entire journey so far.
Absolutely. And as you've said, I mean, one of those certs is the ambassador certification. And from a in that role, you've really been looking at driving the community, within Pakistan. I mean, at the moment, it's a fairly small community, but I know together with some other community members, you're really looking to drive that. So share with us what are some of the plans, in terms of the community, in Pakistan.
Yeah. So Kevin, you may recall, like, so in 2020, we had this decade of the EXO event. And the event was very nicely put up. But when we joined the call from Pakistan, there were like only 2 members there. So, so that like really triggered something on my side that we like in Pakistan are like missing out on an amazing opportunity that we have in form of the OpenExO community and in fact the marketplace. So that was my thought process, which started actually my involvement more on the community side. And in June last year, I reached out to you, and basically we started this project of expanding the community here in Pakistan, and 10x the community in Pakistan, because I really felt that the kind of innovation and the kind of knowledge base that we have in the community, it would be a great asset for people here in Pakistan. So that's like was the driving factor. So I started in June and July, and my like focus area, the first focus area is to basically create that awareness, because what I found was that like people are not aware about the EXO methodology, one reason could be that the book came out in like 2015, and then there is a gap, and I'm really looking forward for the new book. But so I found that the awareness is missing, and so I started with awake sessions, talking with organization, and then develop our own local community page so that people do feel that it's kind of a local community, and then linked it with the global community. So started with that aspect, created some awareness. So that's like was the first part where I spent time. The second area which I'm right now focusing more on is to actually um, kind of the same approach that I explained, that is part of the certification process, just by showing them the value of what we do in the OpenExO community. So in this aspect, I'm working on. I'm just. I'm not saying I'm in the planning phase of two initiatives. One is trying to see if an OpenExO course could be introduced in a university here, in a top university here, so that and the goal is that we have a very huge population in terms of the youth population as well. So we are a populous nation for sure, but we have a youth population which is like very emerging. So I do feel that if this concept is introduced at that stage, it would definitely help the country itself to go to the next level. So that's also one of my goals. So that's an area where I'm working. I've been talking to a couple of community members. They've been very helpful in sharing their feedback. And the second part of is to actually run a kind of a mini EXO sprint to actually show how you can 10x your innovation culture, which we call very quickly. So these are the two areas which are in the planning mode, and for sure I'm going to run this. But as time will allow, and as thing will progress, definitely this would kick in. So these are the three main areas that I'm focusing on the community side.
Awesome. Really, really great to hear. And you know, as I have shared with you sort of privately, we are here, and our community is also here, because we have local communities all around the world that are doing multiple different things. Whether it's connecting online, physical, as more and more physical things come back, actual physical meetups and physical events, which is really exciting. Now, Shiraz, we have come sort of to the end of the OpenExO Live today, and I always end off by asking that question of, what is that one thing you want to share with folks who are watching the recording, as we end off today?
Yeah. So first of all, Kevin, thank you very much for all the support so far, and thank you for again providing the opportunity. So thank you for that, and thank you for the community for the support so far, and looking forward for all the support. And I think I would end by this quote from Picasso, which is like the meaning of life is to find your gift, and the next phase is to, and the purpose of life is to give the gift away. So I think for all of us, it's important that we find like where our gift is, and then ensuring that the purpose is to share with others, and how we can use our gifts to help others. So that's where I'm also looking forward in terms of any help that I can provide to anybody. I'm more than welcome to, because I've received a lot of help from different community members. So please reach out if you need any help, need anything that I can support the community with.
Awesome. Thanks so much for that, Shiraz. And yeah, looking forward to chatting with you, seeing what happens there in Pakistan. It was really great chatting to you, and have a fantastic evening.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Thank you very much. You have a nice rest of the day. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Great chatting to Shiraz this evening for me and for him as well. And as Shiraz pointed out there, the community adds so much value to people. And I recommend anyone who's in the community, reach out to Shiraz across the platform. He's offered to share. And if you're not part of the community, you can quite easily join OpenExO community at openexo.com/community. So do join us. I'm going to end off with a clip for the new book, which Shiraz mentioned, and we'll see you all again next week.